let's move on to the Washington Redskins, who, as Dan Steinberg wrote, Scot McCloughan said they wanted to stockpile picks. That's exactly what they did. They ended up getting 10 picks, 3 offensive linemen, 2 wide receivers, 2 linebackers, 1 corner, a safety, and a running back. Their first pick was Brandon Scherff, who they're going to move to right tackle. So they're going to have the bookends, Trent Williams and Brandon Scherff, to presumably protect Robert Griffin III, who they got signed for their 5th-year option. Steins, I'll ask you, did Scot McCloughan do enough to address the Redskins' needs during the draft?
You know, I think he did with the first pick, certainly address the obvious need. But I think we talked about going into the draft. I don't know that this was a draft that was about filling needs. I think there's needs all over this roster. And that's why, I mean, the 10 picks, I like the strategy of getting as many kind of chances at the lottery as possible and seeing what you hit on. I don't think, you know, and we'll get duped into believing this in July when they, you know, score 25 points in an exhibition game. But I don't think any of this is about what they do in 2015. You know, this team has been really dreadful for much of the past 5-6 years, and it's a long-term rebuilding project. And it's not really about the needs for this year or next year, or the year after. It's about kind of building some kind of a base for the future. And so I'm not enough of a talent evaluator to know whether, you know, the wide receiver that they got in the 4th round is a guy that's going to stick around or whatever. But I think the strategy, at least, of trying to stockpile picks and trying to give yourself as many chances as possible to hit, I like that strategy.
We have seen teams in the NFL go from 4 or 5 wins to the playoffs. I'm not saying that's what the Skins are going to do, but it's happened before. There is a precedent. Neil, did Scot McCloughan do what he needed to do to address the Redskins' needs in the draft?
I think so. They needed an edge rusher, a safety, and an offensive lineman. He got all 3 of those. This was not a draft for safeties, so, you know, justifiably they used a much later pick on that. But I think you know, Scot McCloughan deserves the benefit of the doubt at this point in terms of what we've seen, right? Especially in the middle round pick. So I wasn't a big fan of the pick of the offensive lineman so high. Yep. But again, I mean, this is the long game. It's not a team that you can fix in one draft or one free agency period. So right now he deserves the benefit of the doubt, I think, but time will tell. I mean, we'll see what happens.
Well, Scott, I don't think the Washington wanted to go into the season with Tom Compton as their right tackle. So Brandon Scherff was there. They took him. Apart from that, or in addition to that, did Scot McCloughan do what he had to do in the draft for the Skins?
I think for him to address all the needs, to say he would need 20 picks as opposed to the 10 that he was able to get after turning 7 into 10. What I like about it is kind of alluding to what Dan said, kind of establishing a base by going different position each round. I mean, tackle, outside linebacker, running back, wide receiver, guard, inside linebacker, safety. Like Dan said,
pass catcher.
Taking a line strategy. Yeah.
Raiders East.
Yeah.
But I mean, I like the guys that got in, and I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt as well. I mean, with Brandon Scherff over Leonard Williams, you pass on Leonard Williams, but you go back and you get Preston Smith in the next round. He's got the track record. Whether they go from 4 wins to playoffs or beyond, I mean, that is going to depend on the guys already in-house, namely the QB.
I mean, the thing that's amazing to me about the reaction, and a lot of Redskins fans were not happy with the first pick. They wanted Leonard Williams or at least the trade back. But if they actually believed that Scherff was the superior player, that's what they say. They say they had him ranked as ranked higher on their board. You know, sure, you add something by trading back, but there's a risk there that someone else trades up in front of you and gets the guy that you want. I don't know that it's really worth it if you really believe that the one guy is better.
Is Scherff going to be the guy that makes the biggest impact because he was their first pick, or are there some other guys that they've chosen you think you
he better be. I think when you're taking the guy number 5 overall, he better be the guy that makes the biggest impact.
But I mean,
your thoughts, Neil?
I think Preston Smith probably make a bigger impact only because it's easier, I think, to assess his contribution because he'll probably take over for Brian Rockpo, maybe be that interior pass rusher that need to defend against the run on the edge. But you know, an interior lineman, how are you going to judge, you know, him on the right tackle side, right? At least the left tackle side, it's the blind side. Yeah. It's much easier. So I'm not really sure if he'll have as visible of an impact. But you know, like you're saying, I mean, he probably had to be the best player available because the other best player, consensus best player available, was available and they passed. So I believe them when they say that this was their number 1 guy. I mean, otherwise, why not take him?
I'll tell you one way we can measure Scherff is how many times he picks up Robert Griffin III.
You can certainly do that. But I mean, but optically, I mean, you'd have to watch every game, every play, and dissect film, I think, to get his true impact.